Before this game even tipped off, the tension was already heavy. South Carolina versus Tennessee. SEC pride. Physical basketball. No shortcuts. And when noise faded and the scoreboard told the story, two voices explained everything. Madina Okot. Okot and Latson. What they win didn't sound like celebration. It sounded like control. Like standards. Like a team that knows exactly who it is, and exactly where it's going. This wasn't a press conference. This was a window into the mindset of South Carolina basketball. So before we break down what Madina Okot revealed about the battle in the paint. Before we unpack how Okot and Latson explained tempo, leadership, and pressure. Before we show you why this win over Tennessee matters far beyond one. Make sure you like this video, it helps this story reach real basketball fans. Subscribe to the channel if you want in-depth women's basketball stories you won't get anywhere else. And comment below, do you think South Carolina just sent a message to the rest of the SEC? Because once you hear how these two leaders talked after the win, you'll understand something very important. South Carolina isn't chasing moments. They're enforcing a stand. Let's get into it. From the opening tip, this game felt different, and by the time Madina Okot and Okot and Latson stepped into the post-game press conference room, the message was already clear. This wasn't just another win. This was a statement shaped by discipline, toughness, and a deep understanding of what it takes to survive SEC basketball at its highest. The room was quiet when they sat down. Not tense. Not celebratory. Focused. That alone told the story before a single question was asked. Madina Okot leaned forward slightly in her chair, composed, almost reflective. Okot and Latson sat beside her, calm but alert, the kind of presence you see from a player who understands how much weight every possession carries at this stage of the season. Together, they embodied the identity South Carolina showed for 40 minutes on the floor. The first question went straight to physicality, and Okot didn't flinch. She talked about preparation, about knowing Tennessee would come at her with strength and aggression in the paint. She explained that the key wasn't matching force with force, but matching it with discipline. Staying vertical. Trusting footwork. Understanding angles. Letting Tennessee's desperation work against them instead of forcing plays that weren't there. Okot made it clear that her role wasn't just about blocking shots or finishing inside. It was about anchoring the defense. Being vocal. Calling out rotations early. Making sure guards knew where help was coming from. She spoke about communication as if it were just as important as scoring, because for South Carolina, it is. She credited her teammates repeatedly. The guards who steered drivers into help. The forwards who rotated on time. The bench that stayed engaged. It wasn't a star performance in her eyes, it was a collective effort built on trust. Then came the question about growth. Okot paused for a moment before answering, and that pause said everything. She talked about confidence, not loud confidence, but quiet belief. The kind that comes from hours in the gym, film sessions, and learning through mistakes. She admitted earlier in her journey she might have rushed moments like this. Now, she embraces them. Against Tennessee, she didn't need to prove anything. She needed to execute. And that mindset showed in every possession. When the focus shifted to Okot and Latson, the tone subtly changed, not because the message was different, but because her role demands a different kind of leadership. Latson was asked about tempo, about how South Carolina managed Tennessee's pressure without losing rhythm. Her answer was simple, but revealing. She talked about patience. About not deciding what she was going to do before the defense showed its hand. About reading defenders instead of reacting emotionally. She acknowledged Tennessee's energy, especially in stretches where the crowd surged and momentum threatened to swing. But she emphasized that the game plan was never to speed up just because the opponent wanted chaos. South Carolina wanted control. Latson described her role as balancing aggression with awareness. Knowing when to attack. Knowing when to pull it out. Knowing when a pass mattered more than a bucket. She spoke about spacing, about trusting teammates to be where they were supposed to be, and trusting herself to make the right read. Leadership came up quickly, and Latson didn't shy away from it. She talked about leadership not as speeches, but as habits. Talking in huddles. Making eye contact during free throws. Pulling a teammate aside after a missed assignment instead of letting frustration linger. She described leadership as consistency, doing the same things when you're up 10 as when you're down 2. What stood out most was how both players spoke about accountability without ever pointing fingers. Everything was we. Every success was shared. Every adjustment was collective. When asked what this win means moving forward, neither player took the bait of big-picture hype. Okot emphasized consistency. She spoke about how wins like this only matter if they're followed by discipline in practice. Film sessions where mistakes are still addressed. A mindset that refuses to relax just because the scoreboard says South Carolina won. Latson echoed that sentiment, adding that the team believes it hasn't played its best basketball yet. And that belief wasn't frustration, it was motivation. She explained that games like this sharpen them. Expose small things. Force growth. There was no talk of rankings. No talk of statements. No talk of headlines. Just standards. As the press conference continued, subtle moments revealed even more. The way Okot nodded while Latson spoke. The way Latson glanced over when Okot answered. This wasn't two players sharing a stage, it was two leaders reinforcing the same message from different angles. South Carolina didn't beat Tennessee because of flash. They didn't win because of one dominant run or one explosive quarter. They won because they stayed connected when things got uncomfortable. And that's exactly what the press conference reflected. No jokes. No distractions. Just purpose. The final question came, and it was about toughness, mental and physical. Okot answered first. She talked about embracing contact. About understanding that SEC games aren't supposed to feel easy. About learning to love the grind because it prepares you for March. Latson followed, talking about mental toughness. About staying present. About not letting one bad possession turn into two. About trusting preparation when fatigue sets in. Then it was over. They stood up, thanked the media, and walked out, the same way they played. Calm. Composed. Unshaken. And that's the real takeaway from South Carolina's win over Tennessee. Not just that they won, but how they carried themselves afterward. Madina Okot and Latson didn't sound satisfied. They didn't sound relieved. They sounded locked in. Because it's South Carolina, wins like this aren't the destination. They're the expectation. And if this press conference was any indication, this team isn't slowing down, they're just getting sharper. And when the lights dimmed, when the cameras stopped rolling, what remained wasn't celebration. It was clarity. Madina Okot didn't talk like someone surprised by success. Latson didn't sound like someone satisfied with one win. They sounded like leaders who understand the weight of every possession, every practice, every moment still ahead. South Carolina didn't beat Tennessee because of noise. They didn't win because of hype. They won because they stayed connected when the game demanded discipline, and that's exactly what the post-game press conference revealed. This wasn't a finish line. It was a checkpoint. And if this is how they talk after a win like this, imagine how locked in they'll be when the stakes rise even higher. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit like, it tells YouTube this content matters. Subscribe if you want real women's basketball stories, not just highlights. And comment below, what impressed you more tonight, Madina Okot's presence in the paint or Latson's control of the game? Because the season isn't slowing down. And neither is South Carolina. I'll see you in the next one.